Yeah, well, our narrative has definitely evolved from those origin days. I mean, so today as a firm, we manage around 170 billion around the world, with a little bit under 100 in the US and 70 in Europe. We started
Hmm.
off those 20 funds back in June of '06 was, if you look at where the ETF industry in the US is today, it's around a $15 trillion market. When we started, it was like 300 ETFs, 300 billion. It was still quite small for the scheme of things. And our
Yep.
CEO had discovered ETFs. So this is the future of asset management. And, at the time, all ETFs tracked an index,
Yeah.
and they all tracked externally managed indexes. So, Vanguard would go to S&P or MSCI or Russell, and that was the par for the course. And so we set out with the goal of launching our own proprietary indexes and then launching ETFs to track them. And that was very novel. It took years to get through the SEC. People like talk about how hard it was to get things like Bitcoin approved to get through the SEC. To do your own affiliated self-index was just as hard 20 years ago. And, so that was, how we started. And we've got, really hundreds of different strategies beyond those first 20 that we launched in June of '06. So as a
Hmm.
firm, we've continued to diversify the business away from just, equity indexes and value, which was the original concept. Now we're doing things like thematics and, fixed income, commodities, futures, long, short. We're doing all sorts of way more interesting things than just, the original concept. But
Yep.
we've also evolved, and we now have a digital assets business, well, tokenization as sort of a new wrapper going beyond ETFs. We've been
Yep.
investing heavily for the future of finance, we think, building the new rails, and have some of the most, I'd say, extensive offerings in the tokenized fund world. We also have been making a few acquisitions lately, and last year we acquired a farmland business, and now we have, it was our first private markets foray, and we now have $2 billion plus in a private, really fund structure to give access to farmland. We're one of the top 10 institutional managers for farmland in the country. And there it was about providing unique, diversifying, good returning. It was all about alpha. The
Hmm.
sort of origin story of WisdomTree was trying to deliver alpha on top of an index. And here, there's no cheap beta to get farmland. There's
Yep.
expensive beta. And,
Yep.
we think our team that we acquired, it's called Series Partners out of South Bend, Indiana. They've delivered consistent alpha for the farmland space. And, it's a very interesting, they're, in the process of launching a new fund now, but it's gone way beyond that ETF story for sure.